Edulatte, and my name's Beck Keough. I'm the founder of Edulatte, and I'll be your host tonight. But our special guest host tonight, more importantly, is Steph Smith. Our focus with Edulatte is around people, pedagogy, practice and passion in education. Before we start, always here in Australia, we like to acknowledge that our traditional custodians of the land. So I'd like to just read through a small acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge that I am recording and hosting this webinar from the lands of the Yuin people. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of various lands from which you all work on today, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this meeting and webinar. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and their connections to lands and the waters across our country. Okay, I want to introduce Steph to start with, who will be providing us with a wonderful learning experience tonight, and I hope you all enjoy the journey. So Steph, did you want to do a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. So I currently work for the Museum of Australian Democracy, which is located at Old Parliament House in Canberra. I'm the learning manager of a very beautiful team of about 10 that work there. We have over 90,000 students come on site and visit us every year, but we also do a lot of outreach, digital programs. But I'm also a trained primary teacher. So I've worked in primary classrooms in New South Wales, the Northern Territory and WA, and I've worked in a lot of other cultural institutions as well.
Thanks, Steph. So I just thought, I've just popped an agenda up. I did think I would quickly explain name it, claim it and explain it. The next session that we host with our next guest, we're hoping to kind of start the session off with name it, claim it and explain it. So if you happen to join in next time, we'd love to hear if there's something perhaps that Steph said or that there was an idea that you grabbed onto and that you've actually implemented in your classroom or in your context. It's just that idea of actually growing collaboratively, and that's what Edulatte is all about. It's about sharing and celebrating and you know, celebrating each other's successes and journeys. So yeah, next time we hope to have it name it, claim it and explain it. That's what that is. So I've introduced Steph, and as she said, she works with MoAD in Canberra and runs some fantastic digital programs. I can attest. I've had the privilege of working on one with my class, and Steph was brilliant in tailoring that to meet the students' needs. So highly recommend that to all educators across the country. So I have a little video here, I hope, about what is student voice, and I thought this might be just a little segue into actually understanding student voice and what it means in the classroom context, and this is a department education. Sorry, a little glitch there.
To let your students do a survey on you and give you direct feedback was just a crazy idea. When we took the survey, kind of reluctant at first. By being truthful and telling the teachers what they can improve on, they've implemented that and they've made learning better for the students at Elderslie.
It feels empowering because you feel like you're valued with your ideas and how you can teach like a teacher can. Now kids can have a say in what they're learning and the teacher will acknowledge and listen to them.
I actually see teachers and students working together and teachers actually listening.
It feels great. You feel like proud to be in the Elderslie Public School. Anyone can have student voice. But we're trying to get students to be a better learner.
Student voice is simply students having the opportunity, the real belief that their feedback about their classroom and school environment can be captured by the school and acted upon.
Before, student voice was a big thing at our school. I would always spend hours at home thinking, how can I make my lessons exciting? How do I know that the students are going to be engaged in this? And now, instead of worrying about that all the time, I'm actually asking my kids.
The secret to improve our impact as classroom teachers was to simply ask our students what they need. That then led into the think team, where we had the students actually teaching lessons lessons in our classrooms, planning with staff, co-designing lessons with the teachers.
To be honest with you, sometimes the kids' ideas are a million times better than mine.
Well, we have a lot of characters that represent different types of learning. So we have retro-reflective. He's about being reflective on your work. Then we have Pop the problem solver. That's all about problem solving. And we've got a bunch more about like cooperation and stuff like that.
Our students' voice needs to be respected and heard. It needs to count. Elderslie Public is a prime example. They've embraced formally the opportunity to take regular feedback from students.
Very rarely now is there anything organised where a teacher doesn't say, well, actually, have we asked the kids? You know, they are the voice, they have the vision for the school. Once children are given the permission to make a difference, you know, we actually are preparing them for the world that they are going into.
That's what our kids are doing at 12. Imagine what they're going to be doing at 25.
So I just thought that that was a nice little segue into kind of what Steph's actually going to introduce us to tonight. It kind of really encapsulates what we all really want in our classrooms. So I'm going to hand over to Steph now, and I'll be the official button pusher, and she will take it from here.
Thank you so much, Beck. Now, I do want to preface this that it is a very small snapshot. As I started looking for some bits and pieces this week to pull together for you, I realised that it's not a lot of time to share with you the journey that I've been on. And so what I've pulled together is one example of how I started in the classroom and where I started with my students. And a little bit on what gave me the inspiration and why I changed the way that I was teaching in my classroom, and then a little bit on what I do now and how my role at the museum has changed the way that I look at student voice as well. And Beck and I will give you lots of opportunities to ask questions as well if you would like to know more. So please drop anything in the chat. But we can absolutely, there'll be time for, we can absolutely have a conversation at the end as well. And I'm keen to hear your thoughts. So when I started my journey, I was very fortunate to be team teaching with another educator who was equally as passionate about our students as I was. And we together had a different way of approaching our experiences in the classroom and the learning that we were offering. And we did start with a play program, and it expanded from there into inquiry, into running SOLs, which are self-organised learning environments, and into collaborating with other classes across the school. And it just expanded and grew from there. But where we started was with a very simple idea of a backyard safari. We wanted to get students engaged with our local, our school environment, and to creating better spaces that suited their needs and brought in some of the wildlife, some bugs and mini beasts into our school. And so the students we had in our class were only in year 2. I worked in a low SES area, refugees and migrants. We also had a support unit with a lot of students that had behavioural needs. And so one of the big challenges that we found was that even in year 2, these children were so used to school and so used to a teacher-directed environment. They weren't used to making choices for themselves. They weren't used to, you know, being asked for their opinion or being invited to share their ideas. And so Jess and I had to really go back to the beginning. And so this backyard safari for us was a guided inquiry. And so what we did was we layered it. So what you can see there is I've got an introduction to the unit where we talked about how you care for mini beasts and how you're safe when you're interacting with them out in the environment. And we broke the unit up into 2-week blocks. So we had this little introduction because we wanted them to explore and to choose their mini beasts. So we wanted to provide lots of opportunities for them to explore text, for them to play, for them to watch clips and decide whether, you know, a ladybug was for them or whether they wanted to focus on a caterpillar or a butterfly. And that was their first big choice. Then the subsequent parts of the unit were broken into 2 weeks. So you can see we did 2 weeks on description, 2 weeks on life cycle, 2 weeks on habitat, and 2 weeks on interesting fact. So what we found when we started the unit of work was that the students were very much, we could create a poster and that's it. That's how we present all our work. You put it on a beautiful poster, looks fantastic. So we layered our learning with explicit instruction. So we would show them an example. We do like a little tune-in where we'd show them an example and then they'd have an opportunity to put it in practice. And so as we moved through the unit, we gave them more ways that they could present their work. So if Beck goes to the next slide for me, we, so here you can see that we started to create templates for the students that we would model. So if they wanted to create a little video clip, we would have a little template. They'd be able to go to a folder, so they'd be able to, you know, draft their outline. If they wanted to create, you can see there's a little Lego model in the middle there. If they wanted to create a diorama, they could, if they wanted to draw and paint. And we just started to build on how they could show their learning in the classroom. And so by the end of the unit of work, they had this bank of, you know, ideas and different ways that were beyond a poster that they could show their understanding of each part. And so together it pulled together this beautiful little package where, you know, they were able to share with other students and say, you know, look, I've made a poplet to show different environments, or I've created a little clip that shows me as a reporter talking about, you know, the habitat. I'm outside in the garden, showing you where you might be able to find a snail in our environment. So it was really exciting to see these children because, you know, as I'm sure you're aware, there was a lot of, they couldn't possibly do that. You know, they're only in year 2. They're only small, you know, we're struggling. Some of them have got English as an additional language. And it was an amazing opportunity to be able to showcase just how much they could do and the knowledge that they had. And so we found that this was such a great foundation block for us to then build on our inquiries and to be able to show, you know, so then they could step it up and they could have more ownership over their learning. I want to talk to you about one specific activity we did, and then I'm going to show you a little clip so you can see them, the student, one of the students chatting to another student, because that was the biggest thing we found as well, that it was more about the conversations they were having and the way they were developing their language through the unit. And Jess and I were really just facilitators in going, okay, so we've set out our guide. How do we make this happen? How do we show, you know, how do we help you? How do we provide you with the tech to make your vision come to life? So on the next slide, I've got a labeled diagram of a beautiful grasshopper. And I apologize, it's a little bit blurry for you, but we ran this activity with the students. Isn't it cute?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so what we did with the students was we said to them, you know, it's really important that with our description, we, you know, really look at the animal, we really look at the insect, and we can, you know, we want to be able to talk about the different parts. We want to be able to showcase, you know, a fantastic description. And this was one part of it. But what we did was we got them to draw their mini beast. And they drew it in just lead pencil, and we said to them, it's absolutely a rough draft. You'll get another go. Don't worry, you know, there's multiple opportunities. This isn't a, you know, one-off thing. So they did their drawings and we photocopied them all. And we got out all of our art materials that we owned. We got out the oil pastels, we had out the watercolors, we had out the fine tip markers, everything we owned. We set them up on the tables in the classroom and we said to them, take your picture and go and experiment. Go and try different things. Find out what works for you and what works for your drawing. And so they went around and they tested little bits on their drawing and, you know, and they had a good go. You could hear them chatting to each other. And then we brought them all back together and we got them to share what they discovered about the materials. And we said, okay, so talk to us about what really worked for your drawing. And so you had students going, I really liked using the fine felt tip pens because my mini beast has a lot of detail. And so it allowed me to really, you know, show that finer detail. Whereas if I use, you know, repaint and a paintbrush, you can't see as much. I can't do, you know, I can't get in the fine little bits because the paintbrush wasn't fine enough. Or you can see here, I was able to mix different shades of green, which really highlighted what the grasshopper looks like. And so then we gave them a second go. So they took all the feedback on board. They listened to the other students' ideas about, you know, the materials, and we gave them another chance to draw their mini beast and to use the material, and more than one if they wanted, to be able to create their description and to be able to create their piece to go with it, to showcase. So I found that was, you know, we ran these little sessions in there so that they could get those skills and so they could use them in other ways. So they knew what different materials would work when they were creating, you know, a diorama, or, you know, we ran another session where we just looked at photography and we looked at like Steve Parrish and we showed them books and said, you know, there's fine art to taking photographs of animals. And, you know, we had the opportunity of, we had stick insects in our classroom. And, you know, for a couple of weeks, we had tiny frogs and we had a spider at one point in our room and a fish. And so we were able to say to them, we've got these opportunities to go out and to take photographs and talk about what that looks like. And you can see how people create them in books. So that they had that experience as they were using technology as well. So I've got a little clip to show you, and it was very hard. I assure you, it was very hard for me to pick one because I actually had three that I wanted to show you. But this one is beautiful because this student was actually focusing on ladybugs. So what you'll see here is she's not even talking about her own mini beast, she's talking about others. And it's down at our little wetland, and they've used some plastic bugs, but it really gives you the sense of the David Attenborough environment that I created during this. So I'll play this little, you can play this little clip so you can hear their learning.
This is a one. Its body is orange and it has black spots. Look at this poisonous frog. It's blue and it has blue spots. Better not touch it with your fingers. Look at this interesting snake. Question, why are we not allowed to touch frogs? Because frogs, they might get hurt. So you must look at them. Well, are they poisoned, some of them, with the different colours, or no? Yes. Yes? And look at this red frog. It has black legs and a black bottom. Look at that frog. It's another frog of that other frog at the bottom.
You can appreciate they might have needed some more work with their filming techniques. We all learn.
It's red. It's so big, that bullet. Do you know how bullets get fired? And it has 6 legs. What's your question? My question: how does bullets can bite? How can they bite your hand? They can bite it with their pincers, just right there. So you must be careful of bullets. Now,
Yeah, so just a tiny clip, but you can see the language in there, and just the fact that it wasn't even her mini beast, but the fact that she talks about the pincers and they're starting to use the descriptive language, and you can hear them talking, like it's really lovely. You can hear there's little conversations going on in the background where she's trying to reframe the question for her. I had another one I was watching for you today where it was an EALD student and one of our quieter students, and she was reframing the questions and prompting him when he was giving one answer responses. So, you know, he was saying, they're butterflies, and she was saying, but how many butterflies do you have there? What color are the butterflies? I'm like, that's exactly what you want from these students. You know, it's those conversations between each other. It's that sharing of learning that's not coming from me, that's coming from them sharing how excited they are about the learning, about the content and what they're discovering. And, so I thought this clip was a really nice piece to show you, to describe that. All right, Beck, next slide. Okay, so that was very much, I know, Lego. It was very much just one example of our classroom, to give you a little bit more where it went. We ended up, our school ended up with some chickens. Congratulations to my year 2s on their persuasive text to the principal after we hatched some chickens. But then that became an inquiry. So we had groups looking at, different types of chicken coops, what we needed to keep them safe. We had other groups looking at fencing. We had other groups looking at a garden for them and how they could get down to the wetland. And so it really expanded the students' thinking, and they were able to move themselves from a guided inquiry into running little inquiries themselves and being able to share the information. So the linking in and going, okay, so I'm focusing on the chicken coop, but I'm going to need to talk to the fence people to make sure that, my chicken coop fits in their fence, and to make sure the plants are all right, and, to make sure that we're picking plants that fit in with our local area. So it was really lovely to watch them grow throughout the year. And the thing that I was very fortunate to do, and a lot of this is part of my thesis work, was some of these kids I had the fortune of working with for 3 years. So some of them I'd had in year 1, I took them all the way to year 2, and then I moved on to 3, 4 with them. And so I got to see that growth over that time as they became independent learners, and they were way more ownership over their learning. And you could see the difference between students when I took a year 3, 4 class, the year 4s that I hadn't had. You could absolutely see the difference, and we were able to help build them up and to bring them into that process and to share the knowledge that the year 3s had learnt while working with us. But now I am out of the classroom and I work at this is beautiful old Parliament House here in Canberra with my fabulous Lego people that travel everywhere with me. In fact, that's me on the end with the cupcake dressed in glitter. It is my own Lego figure, and that's my husband. My husband's the one with the coffee cup. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, there. And it's probably Raph in the middle. Do you reckon, Raph, is it too stereotypical there with a library vibe in the middle?
Yeah, absolutely. I got that straight away.
Excellent. We can work on everyone's Lego figures. I have enough to share,
please.
I assure you. There's enough here to help you out. So my main role now at the museum is around how I help teachers and how I take this knowledge of student voice and agency that I've developed throughout my classroom experience and throughout working with other cultural institutions, and how I essentially fit that under our banner of democracy. So a big part of my work is saying to students when they come on site, and I'm very aware that not for you in the crowd today, but for others, it's very frightening to tell a teacher that a student can have voice and agency in their classroom. And so I've got a couple of examples of how we discuss this with students. So first of all, on site, we've taken the approach of saying, talking about the fact that you are part of our democracy. So here, this is a beautiful artwork that we have in our workshop space. It's by Eric Lebecki, and he's a political cartoonist. He also has written a couple of picture books, and he does these fantastic collaborative pieces with audiences. So we're toying around at the moment as to whether we can get students to help us to create a collaborative cartoon piece around student voice. But the idea behind this is it's all about grassroots democracy, and it's all about building a strong foundation. And that for us, Old Parliament House, or MoAD, is for students. We want it to be a place where they can express their views, express their opinions, have a say, and they'll be listened to. And that we will show them different ways that they can communicate. Because one of my biggest things is that it's really fantastic to talk about climate change, and it's really fantastic to talk about Greta. But what does that look like in a student's home, in their daily lives, in the classroom, in their community? How do you bring that back and say, that's fantastic that you're passionate about that issue. What are you going to do? What will you do to make a difference in your community now? That you don't need to wait until you turn 18. You don't need to wait until you can vote. You don't need to protest. You don't need to sign petitions. There are other ways, as well as those, that you can have a voice. So we created a new piece that I had installed about a week ago. And this one I'll predominantly use with secondary, and it comes out of Enlighten, which is our big light festival that we have here in Canberra, where all of the buildings, like they have Vivid in Sydney. And so we have this big community art installation where we invite the public normally into the building. And this one was all around bees, because bees love a good democracy. And they work as a fantastic community. And so we got participants to create, fill in these honeycombs. And so what I've done is I've lifted off the words that were relevant to students. And we've picked up some other keywords that we can talk with them about how you be a responsible citizen and how you are a solution architect. So a big part of my work is saying to students, I'm very aware that there's a lot of pressure on you, that you're inheriting a lot as you grow up, but we want to help you with the skills. We want to help you so that you feel positive moving forward. So for us, it's also about media literacy and being able to say, it's okay, it's tough, the online world is hard, but here are some skills to help you with critical thinking. Here's how you analyze them, and so that you're ready to go out there So this will be a really great piece. I'm really excited to use this with secondary. What we've been doing with students when they come on board is we've been giving them pieces of the honeycomb, and we set up some questions, and I wrote the questions to begin with. But what we've done is now that we've done a couple, and you'll be able to see on the next slide, is now that we've started to get responses from students, and they work in groups of 3 for this activity, they've started rewriting the questions, which is exactly what I wanted them to do. So the idea I said to the presenters was that the questions I've just stuck up onto the wall. I haven't had them officially printed. We've not gone down a big design pathway, because I wanted them to be able to be changed out. If students aren't answering one of my questions, they don't want to tell me, you know, what is our democracy, or, you know, why is democracy important, then we need to swap the question. What do they want to tell me? How do they want to share their opinions? So one of the questions we have is, you know, how can you participate in your community or in your school? But I really like these 2 pieces, because you can see at the bottom there that they changed my question to, why is democracy needed? And I thought that was a really interesting take. And the other one, how can you make your voice heard? I think I had, how can you have your voice heard? And I was like, I like yours better. So we'll reframe the questions and pop them up for students to engage with when they come in, so that we can talk about all the different ways that they can have a say. And, you know, we want to hear about the issues that they're passionate about. And I find it really interesting when they come in, because depending on where they're from, you get such a variety of responses from, I'm very concerned that, you know, the ski season is coming up and people come and visit our town and they don't know how to use the chains on their tires. And so we need an education program. You know, there's a McDonald's. They're putting a McDonald's in our local town because we're remote and regional, and it doesn't fit with our vibe. I'm like, I appreciate that. I'm from a very small town in New South Wales. We also did not want a McDonald's. But it's nice to see that they're talking about different issues, and they're talking about issues in their community. And so that was one of our biggest things, was saying to our team, we want them to feel empowered. We want them to leave with a spark that they can have a say, they can make a difference. And it starts with where they are. It starts with their classroom or their school or their local community, and we build from there. So we have lots of these B responses now. And so we're building a hive to go up on the wall. So when students come in, they can see other responses up there. But this was a resource we created with the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment last year, called Sustainable Changemakers. And this one's online, it's on our website, and it's all around problematic and single-use plastics. And the reason I've popped in the model there, we've called this an action-based model. And what I've tried to do with this resource is, we wanted the inquiry approach to be in there. We wanted the why, so we wanted that investigation, but I didn't want it to end there. I didn't want them to get to the end of the inquiry and say, I know that there are problematic plastics out there. I know that they're in the water. I know that the recycling symbol doesn't necessarily mean that the plastic is recyclable. You know, and they present the information to their class or to parents. I wanted them to then make change. And so I specifically wrote into this resource that it's not for you unless you want to let students lead and to create change. And that's where we go into the STEAMED. It's the how. So you come out of the inquiry going, I know this information, this is the change I want to make. And it can be small. So it might be their lunchbox. It might be just, you know, one day a week we have plastic free, or it might be bigger than that. It might be looking at the classroom. But the idea is that the STEAMED and the D's for democracy is that you have to make change, and that you have to implement something out of your discovery in the inquiry to build change, and that it kind of flows. So once they finish one, they can go on and do another inquiry in there. So we just thought it was something a little bit different, and it's that grassroots democracy for us. So this is a whole new world for our team. And then I think I've got one more. Yep. So do you want to do this one, Beck?
Look, we can do it together if you like. Yeah. So obviously,
do you want to explain it?
We had to bring coffee in somewhere, let's face it.
We did.
The idea was basically this way that we can bring inquiry into our classrooms with the democratic voice, and ensuring that our students have voice by starting small and you know, increasing the load of inquiry, or the independence in inquiry, as the students kind of move through the process. So for example, down in the small serve where we've got our small fry or our introductory inquiry, Steph was kind of talking and I were chatting around this idea of must-haves and choices, and ensuring that children, you know, in the initial phases understand that there are some things that won't be negotiable, you have to do, but then there's also choices. And I think, Steph, your example around your initial introduction with regard to the mini beast inquiry really spoke to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I guess we all acknowledge that with student voice is that we can't always do everything. They have fantastic ideas, but it is a conversation with them. And that, you know, in life, there are non-negotiables. And so the idea of starting small was to be able to say to students with a simple activity, these are our must-haves. You know, you must pick a mini beast. But these are your choices, which mini beast you would like to focus on. And so that you're starting to build up that understanding of, you know, we've got to pick some things are set in stone and some things are, these are your little choices. And so that you can build up that skill set and to be able to say, I understand. So you're not jumping full in where you've just got students going, I don't know. I don't know where I want to sit in the classroom. I've never been asked before. So just, we thought that was a nice one as a small win to get started.
I guess from there, we then moved into the medium size serve, where you're kind of giving the children a little bit more, you know, you're kind of saying, hey, you guys understand what a must-have is, you understand what choices are, you understand how to work within those parameters now. Let's give you a bit more choice.
You're absolutely right. It's that, you know, once we started doing, especially our play program, I guess that's where students had more flexibility in being able to choose activities and being able to connect with other students. And we allowed students to run sessions themselves based on their interests. So we'd have students run drawing workshops. We'd have students asked if they could run a science experiment, and we would talk them through the thinking and they would run it. For other students, they'd select art activities that they were interested in. And so what they developed through that is exactly what Beck's saying. They found that they knew more about each other outside of their friendship groups. And so when they were forming those groups, they were able to say, you know, I have this skill, but I'm looking for someone else who can assist with this part of it. And I know that that person's a really good drawer. I know that person, you know, likes to do this kind of activity. They're into science inquiries. I know that they like to do drama, that they've picked role plays for us to run. And so it gave them a lot more understanding about their strengths and their weaknesses and what they could learn from others that were outside of their friendship group, which is really lovely.
Then we had the large, Steph. Ooh, this is where we get serious. This is where we've given them all the skills they really need. And it's kind of expanding beyond the classroom, where I think, Steph, you're the expert here. Can you please talk us through this one?
So we started to in our class, we had about 45 students. It is a lot of work, but it was absolutely worth it. But we would start to invite others into our classroom. And I did mention that we had a support unit. And for us, it was really important that they were included in our mainstream classrooms and that our students could build relationships so that there wasn't a separation when we were out on the playground. And so we used to invite the support unit students down to work with us in the classroom. And similar to the group work, it showed our students what skills they had and the amount of knowledge, and that they weren't so different, and that they could participate in groups, and they could absolutely contribute to our learning and to, you know, creating richer, more diverse experiences. And we would take lead from them as well, from other students, to fit into our inquiries, to fit into our play program, to be able to say, we absolutely, you know, want to help you to be the learners and to find your passions. And as I was saying to Beck when we were chatting about this, you know, you save those special things in the storeroom that you never want to use because they're too good. And we were like, get it all out. We'd have it. We had an art centre. We put out all the good paper. We had a, you know, science area / kitchen. There may have been some cooking in our classroom at some points. We said to the students, we just trained them. We just worked with them to say, these things are available to you to help you create better learning experiences. We've got the technology, and, you know, you don't need to hoard it. We don't need to use 20 of the same thing. They're always going to be there, but we want you to be able to choose. You know, I'm that really annoying teacher in Year 2 that said, why do you need a pen license? You can use purple pens for everything. You can choose, as long as it's not yellow so I can read it. But, you know, we'd have out all the texts. As long as I could read it, it was fine. And so, you know, if you're ready, when you're ready, it's about taking that, you know, that leap. Once you've started to work with students and once you've built those base skills, as Beck said, that you get to a point where your classroom is a very different looking environment where, you know, I never sat at my desk and I never stood at the front anymore. And, you know, we had rotating groups and, you know, students were off doing bits and pieces. We were outside in the garden and it was fantastic. And it was, you know, so worth changing the way that we were teaching, just to see, you know, just to see their learning.
And I guess that's a beautiful segue into questions. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to pop out there for the wonderful Stephanie to answer?
And thank you for all your lovely comments in the chat. I did try and reply to one, but thank you. That's really encouraging.
I think no questions, but I've definitely got a statement on. I think you're doing an amazing job. So keep doing what you're doing. You know, I've been doing this a while now. You can probably tell by the lack of hair, but and it's just so refreshing to hear primary school teachers talking about real stuff. It's I can't tell you how great it is. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mark. You know, I feel like this is a surprise to me. This, you know, I wrote my thesis about 4 years ago, and I didn't realize how different I was until I'm seeing where everyone's at now. You know, we got to a point where I was talking about the fact that if you teach students how to learn, they can learn anything. And it was about building skills. And I sit here now and I'm so excited that people are there, but I really didn't realize when I wrote my thesis how different my thinking was around it. So.
Steph, I've got a question just in terms of, have you in any chance seen your kids progress into sort of the next phase, like a high school setting? Because they'll leave, you know, Year 6 with this wonderful, rich and willing skills and to change the world, and they potentially could run into a brick wall of any sort of teacher.
Yeah.
So have you got any feedback? Because Maya is in that world there,
Yeah.
and however, I'm with you, but it's interesting to see how your kids have adapted into a high school environment.
Do you know what, Mitch? We had the same problem in primary school. I had the same problem when my students left me and went into year 5, 6.
Okay.
Yeah. So whilst I was able to expand the work that I was doing, I was still only a classroom teacher. And I worked with infants. So I had all of lower primary working with me, and I'd managed to get them on board with the play program. And, because Mitch even just explained, how do you sell a play program to primary teachers? I couldn't even do that. I had to call it active learning. I couldn't even use play because I couldn't sell it to teachers. I couldn't sell it to kids because they thought it meant out in the playground, and I couldn't sell it to parents. So we renamed it. But I absolutely am with you, because I felt the pain of these kids coming back to me, and they were put back in their 4 walls, and they come from, when I was in the 3-4, the kids were writing my units of work. So we ran a fitter, stronger, healthier unit. Well, the kids chose the sports they were interested in. They wrote the lesson plans, and we took the kids out. They were doing yoga. I was learning soccer. I was in my fancy glitter dresses with rainbow joggers on as the goalkeeper. They were doing healthy meals for each other and talking through. They were making, different like fruit salads, and they'd write their lesson plan, and away we'd go. So how do you take that, and then they jump to the next year and you're back to a teacher in front of the classroom? And that was so hard. And if I'd had more time, I absolutely would have had the opportunity to work more with the school. It was unfortunate that we moved to Perth. So I did all of my research in New South Wales, and then we had to move across the country. And so I don't know where a lot of the students went. I don't know about their journey past there. And I feel your pain, because there's so much in secondary where you're still running, in isolation. And I'm dealing with the problem now of, I've done a lot in STEM, even though I'm working in a humanities field, and now I'm fighting with the fact that humanities teachers are very upset with what's going on at the moment, especially with universities, and they're very upset with all of the funding that goes to STEM. And I'm going, we can work together. We can work in harmony. I can bring you together. We're learning skills. So imagine how unpopular I am with my new way of thinking at the moment. But
from my feedback, the kids that are coming through and the kids that I've been working with, they're the ones who are challenging teachers in the classroom in their learning. So they're the ones who are taking charge of some of the classrooms, much to the detriment sometimes to the maths teacher. But hopefully you've built enough resilience in those kids to take those teachers on as they've moved through.
Yeah, and I guess all feedback is valuable, and I know it's really hard. And like that little clip that Beck played from Eldersley, it's very confronting for a teacher to say, give me your feedback, because you don't know what they're going to say. And so I can imagine for a secondary teacher that, if students haven't been prepared enough, that, you need those skills around how you share your information, how you share your feedback, how do you have a constructive conversation, and that whilst you have an opinion, it's a conversation. And then for a teacher, I didn't realize, and I know this is so naive, when I did my teaching degree, I didn't realize that people weren't like me. They weren't this passionate. I was really surprised that there were teachers in schools that just went there for a paycheck. I'm like, what are you doing? I don't know who you are. And but you know, I get that for secondary environments and it would be incredibly challenging.
If can I just chime in there for a second? Being a secondary educator, I've been in this space P12 for 17 years now, and one of the things that I've got is what I can fill you with comfort, Mitch, that it actually works, and you will get kids who will fight through the system and be resilient and do what they want to do right the way through the system. I've got kids who've now finished uni, who are still fighting with lecturers and having conversations and doing all the things and talking to me on Facebook about some of the challenges they face, and they're now 30 with their own children. So keep up the good fight, mate. It will happen, I promise you.
Yeah, I know that. It was just interesting because I know that you've come from like a primary into secondary context. So I'm in a P12, so I'm quite lucky to have that same continuation. So it's great.
Yeah, I just wanted to add two things. One is, you know, the humanities, or HAS as we call it, is so important everywhere. And no, actually, you know, I know the government is sort of saying that it is STEM, but mathematics, for example, is losing 17% funding. Because of down. So we're not getting more money. We're actually getting less money.
I will make sure I tell them when they argue with me about it.
That's right. So it's not like, you know, STEM is getting, they're just talking about STEM. They're not funding, overall funding. And the universities are starting to push the HAS because they're getting more money from that. Because overall, HAS is making more money for the universities because of the change in funding.
Steph and I were bouncing around a few ideas if people were interested in getting their hands dirty and having a look at a few more things. Obviously, the Museum of Australian Democracy, please check that website out. There's some brilliant resources. I have trialled the Sustainable Lunchboxes resource, and thumbs up. My kids loved it last year. There's also Pivot. Pivot, do you want to talk to these quick resources, Steph?
Yeah. So Pivot PL there's a lot going on in Victoria, like Vic SRC, for those who are interested in doing a survey with students about how much voice and agency they have in the classroom. But Pivot PL is doing fantastic things, and Amanda employs young people that have just come out of school that have that student voice ownership. And so we've done a little bit of work with some of their but they have a fantastic podcast where they interview students and ask them questions. So it's absolutely worth checking out their website. I know that Vic SRC too are working on some resources that have been co-written with students that they're looking to release soon, which will be really exciting. We've popped in there. We do a lot of work with Dine-in, which you will know from my Twitter feed. And we've been helping with their leadership team, and we'll continue to connect with them over this year. And I often pop out to the school to check in with the teachers and students. And I thought you might like the 2 Cents podcast as well, which is out of Camberwell, Girls Grammar. And it's run by their captains, and it was started last year, and they handed over the baton to the new captains. So they have some exciting things going on as well. Yes, my good friends at Dine-in, they've been very kind to me. So there's just a few things there. I've popped a link to the sustainability resource into the chat for you. It's got the diagram in it and more of an explanation around it to help you, but you know where to find me on Twitter, or you're welcome to email me at the museum if you have any questions, anything else you would like to know. As I said, it's probably just the tip of the iceberg, and I'm always happy to connect, and you'll know that from Beck and I, and you know, a lot of the community that's come tonight is that we're stronger when we work together, when we share our learnings. And so I'm always open to conversations. And like Beck said, she asked for a specific digital program. I ran a specific digital program. So always happy to connect in a variety of ways to help.
Thanks, Steph. I think I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. If you want to touch base with Steph, I think I'll go back to that last screen again. Please, as she said, reach out. We love sharing. We love collaborating. We think that the more we can do this and have these conversations, the stronger we become as educators. And that's the whole point of this whole Edulatte thought process, is to get people together, to start conversations, to provide a variety of ways for us to sit down, have a cuppa, even though we aren't together, and to, you know, enjoy the journey together. So I guess on behalf of Steph and I'd like to say thank you so much for joining us tonight, and keep your eyes peeled. We'll pop the recording up, and please feel free to share that with others and invite them along to the next session. Our next podcast will be released next month, and I'm hoping to host the Oh So Divine, Fee Morrison, and we'll run a PL with Fee as well. So thank you all for coming tonight, and it's been amazing.
Thank you, everyone. It's been so nice seeing your faces and your warm smiles and your nods. And, you know, thank you so much, Beck. Such an honour to be the first, and I look forward to more. I look forward to hearing from more educators. It's such a great initiative. So thank you.
Thank you.